Identity is a term that gets thrown around in a variety of contexts these days. We understand that our perception of ourselves as individuals and our understanding of ourselves as members of a group carries massive implications for how we behave and how we conduct ourselves. It turns out that in the Bible, and in the letters of Paul specifically, hope for future bodily resurrection defines a specifically Christian identity. In this video, we'll dig into exactly what that means. If the questions in this video pique your interest, you may be interested in my recent book, Paul and the Resurrected Body, Social Identity and Ethical Practice. If you want to preview it, there's a link in the description below where you can take a look at the table of contents and an initial chapter. And if you find this video helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up, tap subscribe, click the bell, and share it with your friends and followers on social media to help spread the word about Theology Project. Now, when I talk about Christian identity in the Bible, I'm talking about what it means to understand yourself as a part of the group of people who belong to Jesus. To understand that sense of group identity in the Bible and to begin to get a sense of the implications of that identity, we need to be looking at features of the group identity that defines what believers have in common and distinguishes them from others, outsiders, people who aren't members of the group. What makes us us, and what makes them them, and what makes that different? One way that resurrection is linked together with group identity is in the way Paul endows the concept of resurrection with the concept of honor and glory. Romans 8, 1 Corinthians 15, 1 Thessalonians 4, Philippians 3. For Paul, in all of those texts, the hope for future bodily resurrection is hope for gaining honor and glory from God before others. Honor was the chief value in the ancient world. There was only so much of it to go around, and you wanted to gain as much as you could, even if you had to take some from other people. You were constantly striving for more and more and more honor if you lived in the ancient world. And the thing about honor is, it only makes sense in the context of a group. Right? You only have honor if other people around you consider you to be an honorable person. You only have more honor if their esteem for you goes up. Honor is about looking good in front of other people. So honor is an inherently social category. It only makes sense in the context of the group. When Paul links honor and resurrection, future bodily resurrection, he is endowing the hope for resurrection as part of the social identity of the group. If you are caught up in the group, if you belong to Jesus, if you belong to the group of people who will be raised from the dead, that is a way of gaining honor before God, before other believers, across the board. That's what that looks like. All of that indicates that Paul sees future bodily resurrection, the hope for resurrection, in primarily group terms. It's an aspect of Christian social identity, Christian group identity. The concept of honor also distinguishes believers from unbelievers in the letters of Paul. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, Philippians chapter 3, believers at the resurrection are given honor. Unbelievers, outsiders, idolaters are dishonored. They are condemned. They do not receive honor and glory at the second coming of Jesus or on the day of judgment. So this is one of the ways that Paul distinguished believers and unbelievers. Believers gain honor at the resurrection. Outsiders receive condemnation and dishonor. There are other ways that Paul endows future bodily resurrection, the hope for future resurrection, with aspects of Christian group identity. His language of being in Christ is part of that. His language of being in the Spirit is part of that. We don't have time in this short video to go into all those details, but I do cover those in the book in very specific detail if you want to take a look at that. For Paul, Christian identity matters because it's deeply related to Christian practices, Christian ethics, how we behave, how we conduct ourselves amongst each other and in relation to other people, outsiders, people outside the group. Identity and behavior are deeply interrelated. We see ourselves in a certain way, and we tend to behave in ways that align with our perception of ourselves, our identity. So for Paul, Christian group identity and Christian ethics are deeply intertwined. In Romans, for example, the resurrection-oriented identity cultivates multi-ethnic unity. It stands as part of the foundation that Paul calls Jewish believers and Gentile believers to come together at the same table and together in worship, together in mission. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, the resurrection-oriented identity is related to sexual ethics. In 1 Thessalonians and in Philippians, the resurrection-oriented identity is related to the necessity for perseverance. It is used as part of Paul's foundation to call believers to persevere against the persecution that they're facing in their local context. So this plays out in different ways, in different places for the Apostle Paul. The main thing to see is that future bodily resurrection and the hope for future resurrection are integral, essential parts of early Christian group identity. To be a Christian is to be a part of the people who hope for and expect to be raised bodily from the dead. We are the people who will be raised from the dead in Christ. That is crucial for Christian ethics because we ought to behave as the sort of people who will be raised from the dead when Christ returns. The question then becomes, what does it look like to embody the life of the resurrection in the present, in my relationships at church, at home, at work, with my family, with my colleagues? What would it look like for me to behave in a way that embodies hope for future bodily resurrection? Hey, I hope you found this video helpful. Again, if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, tap subscribe to get and click the bell so you know when future videos come out, and share this one on your social media and let your friends know about the Theology Project.